Welcome to West Coast Women Rising. I'm JJ Flizanes, your host, and joined by another co-host is Tawney Noriega. Welcome, Tawney.
Hello, hello. And today we got Cathy here. She's from the Ventura County Business Women community. We've gotten to kind of connect, but today I actually get to dive in with you and JJ and hear out more about your story and what you're up to. So I'm super excited.
Welcome to the show, Cathy.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity.
So tell us a little bit about why you joined VCBW and the business that you and the skills and the talents and the things you want to impart upon the world.
I joined VC Business Women when I noticed Tawney on Facebook. I'm really impressed with Tawney. She's a young woman. I don't know the details, but I know she's had various things that many would consider big, big struggles. And she just did it. Wow. She's got thousands of women who have joined her. And now that's gone into meeting in person, people creating business together, people learning and growing together. It's an amazing community, and it's amazing to get to join that and get to know so many new people.
And what part did you want to contribute to that in terms of what inspired you to bring your gifts and talents to the world?
Well, when I started, I was deep into a business that I had that we're not going to dive deeply into here today, but it's a need people have, and it's certainly something I'm willing and able to talk to people about. What I do is health sharing. It's an alternative to health insurance, and it works well for people who are not thrilled with the choices out in health insurance land, people who feel afraid because they may be losing their subsidy that comes from the government, those kind of things. And if somebody wants to talk about that, great. However, today, I wanted to talk about what I'm creating in a coaching business that I'm doing. And who I really want to help in that coaching business are single moms, specifically single moms of sons.
What was the need that you saw that you had that you're
Well,
now giving to others?
not surprisingly, I raised three sons. When my children were born, I was what they call in the biz the trailing spouse of a bank executive, an international bank executive. My two older children were born in Prague, Czech Republic. I had to think about it because it used to be Czechoslovakia, but they were born in the Czech Republic. And my youngest son, who is turning 21 this month, is uh, uh, was born in Sao Paulo, Brazil, and is a Brazilian. So that's fun. And I did not know who I was in that marriage. It was fancy, high-paced, fabulous in so many senses. And I felt like a single mom. I was married to a person who worked all the time and who wasn't well integrated into family life. And sure enough, the marriage did end. He chose to get a job in Russia, and we were not invited to join him. So I brought the boys back, and we started a new life, which was really different. I was in Sao Paulo, Brazil. I had a household staff of three. That kept the marriage going, I'm sure, for another 5 years. But back here, guess what? I didn't have that anymore. Dang. I instead was raising three boys on my own and had to learn all the things and readjust and make it work. And I'm thrilled to say they are all potty trained, water safe, and they have even grown up and left home.
So you have a recreation story, like a rebirth, basically, that when you went from one extreme to the other of having some different kinds of support to then being the sole center of support as a woman and now as a business owner. So what sparked that? What was the defining moment when you said, I want to help other people?
I think I've always wanted to help other people. The trouble was, where does that fit? Where does that go? And then, of course, it's one thing if you have a gazillion dollars and you can just go out and do things, volunteer. That's fun. I wouldn't mind volunteering and running for office maybe, or who knows what. That turned out, as it happened, to not be my story. And one can also be of service in business. And I, several years ago, worked in the insurance field and learned a lot, thank God, because guess what? Where was the first place I was able to be of service was with my own parents who had a decline and my mother died. They had long-term care insurance, which was the great kind that you used to be able to buy back in the 1900s, back then. And it was a fantastic policy, but it's very difficult and complicated. So thank God I was able to get that started. And my sister and I worked for a season as caregivers for our parents, especially after our mother's death when dad needed help. So that was where it started. And I realized that raising sons is a specific kind of thing. The way that I see that is through my new marriage of 2 years. I married a man who chose to only date women who had kids because he, in a previous marriage, had had a chance to be a grandpa. He himself didn't have children. And when he learned about being a grandpa, he was after that. And then as we got together, we realized he was raised by a single mom. I raised my own children. And it is really interesting the way these things come together and the way that, yeah, but just let me leave it there. Things
Yeah.
come together in an interesting way because of those relationships.
Well, I'm about to come in and we can't just leave it there. Let's dive into this part because I do, and you kind of were touching it, um, I really think everybody has some story, right? There's some version of something that happened that was like, you're kind of just giving us a little bit. And I'm like, oh, I can feel it. I can feel, kind of, I'm saying pain. But then I can also hear the transition into possibility. So I talk about that a lot in the community, in my life, and JJ as well, in her own aspects where, it's funny how business owners, women in particular, somehow they kind of take the pain and turn it into their possibility. They take what maybe had happened, quote unquote, to them. They go through whatever emotions and the rides of it, and then they come back to their power, and then they go and serve others. And that kind of sounds like what you did there or are doing. What's the question? How do you do that? I'm thinking of all the women that I'm around that I conversate, who will listen here on the podcast. I think it's cool to hear about like these, hardships then transitioning into now you're in your truth, you're sharing your message. It sounds like a beautiful human and partner next to you that working that out. How do you actually move through those spaces to take pain into possibility? And I know that's a loaded question, but if you want to share anything that comes up there.
Well, I feel like I am in really amazing company here because the two of you do that work all the time. And there are lots of hows we could say. I'm going to say that one of my, let's say, hows is starting with what I did when I moved to Europe. I was a grammar teacher, an English teacher, really an English as foreign language teacher. But I am telling you, that Czech language kicked my butt. That is such a crazy grammar in that language. And so teaching Czech people how to speak English correctly let me learn things that are insightful. One example, we have a verb tense that's called the past perfect conditional. Past perfect, doesn't that sound beautiful? When the past is perfect, but this is how it sounds. If I had only gone to Berkeley instead of UCLA, I wouldn't have met this stupid guy. I wouldn't have had to live at home. Everything would have been different. That is the past perfect conditional. It is a past thing. And not only that, it's an imaginary past thing. It is a thing in the past that never even happened. And today, what do? We dwell on it. That is the past perfect conditional. Oh, instead, we might move to the present perfect. Weirdly, the present perfect is actually a way we express past action in English. We say things like this. I have finished my hike. I have already read the material. I have done my mic check and my mic seems to be working. So these are the present perfect are activities that actually were in the past, but they touch the present, they affect the present, and they set us up for the future. So as a grammar geek, I would say one how for me is listening for people's language and pointing out to them quite specifically in their language when they are living in an imaginary past crazy world where they're stuck. We also, obviously, we call that rumination. It is the grammar of rumination. And guess who did a lot of that?
You.
Huh. How about that? I did a lot of that in my life because the outside of the story was fun. There were a lot of travels, there were a lot of excitement, there were meeting important people. And I was miserable because in the marriage there was not a connection, and in terms of who I was or wasn't in the world that I occupied, it was like if I wasn't there, it wouldn't have mattered. That was what I realized. And as it happens, apparently that's how it went because that guy went on and he's living a life that he enjoys. And when my kids come back, they love their dad and it's fun to go visit dad in Europe. But they come back and shake their heads because they get it. It yeah, it was a thing that was not going to work in the house, in the marriage. And so we have our life, we do it our way. And then my boys have choices. The name of the business, Sacred Oasis Legacy. I believe that we living today have the opportunity to create that legacy, don't we? And I believe that a lot of people live in a container where I just need to survive and get through. I Or even maybe worse, I did so much for my kids and I expect for them to handle me, take care of me. Ooh, that's really a limited story. What if we all had the idea, both for our family, our own lives, our communities, on creating a legacy? Tawney, you are creating a legacy in Ventura County. You are creating a legacy for other young women who are feeling compelled to stand up and do something. You are creating right now. You're creating a legacy for your own family. Your own children are looking at you and seeing the incredible contribution that their mom is being, your friends, others who saw you struggle and saw things being done to you that they see now has been done for you. You are creating a legacy. And I believe that everyone, we all need to shift and see in context that legacy that we're creating. For me, with my boys, I want to see them not just happy. Happy's nice, but happy is what happens along the way toward legacy. Happy is when we contribute and we choose.
I love that. And so I kind of want to, for the listeners and for myself and JJ and us really understanding, right? So you go through this huge transition in life and then you're the sole supporter now. You're single mama. Do you have three boys at the time?
Yes.
Right. Okay. So you
Those
got
three.
three boys at the time. You've had this huge lifestyle transition. And then at that time, is that where like maybe I say inner work, but that could be personal development or whatever flavor you wanted to do. Is that when you started to go internal and start like looking at your mindset, how you want to serve, what you needed to do to get yourself right in your life?
During the time when my marriage was unraveling is when I began to do that work.
Hmm.
I started reaching out and looking around, and there was somebody I knew in Sao Paulo who was doing training in a life coaching way, and she was new at it. And I'm curious about whether the coaching I received with working with her might have been in a way due to her being a little new, or was what happened in that case in my time in that time frame for my life, was it just what was meant to be? The fact is I was a wreck, and she affirmed me, so that was good in some ways. On the other hand, what I realize now is somebody might have been able to gently give me other insights that could have helped me to begin taking more ownership at an earlier time. The other thing is, I didn't want the marriage to end. I'm a person of faith, and there's a lot about marriage and all of that. My parents suffered through a long marriage, right? And the context, I felt ashamed. A lot of it is I felt ashamed. I felt like a failure. And um, I felt like I wasn't appreciative of the good things that I did have. And again, I wasn't present in many ways there. I didn't know who I was. One
Mm,
thing that is a tell, when I was in that relationship, I would often sort of brag to people or represent to people, do you know, we get along so well with interior design. We, all of our interior design, the way our house is situated and our art and everything, we just agree on it all. And of course, what I realized when I shifted, I didn't know who the hell I was. I didn't have any sense of interior
mm,
design whatsoever. The only art that I really appreciate are two pieces that I purchased as the marriage was unraveling. I stopped at a store and picked up something, and it still has a wonderful spot in my house. It's a big daisy. It's huge,
mm,
big daisy from Brazil. And I have this other statue, this ceramic, I call her Chiquinha. She's a Brazilian native woman with big earrings, and I have her. I want to one day have a house where people walk past very close and I can put her in the window and freak people out.
I love that. You know, I'm kind of like hearing some of myself in some of your story, you know, same things, but in different ways, how it unravels. And even for me, like in, you know, my life and circumstances and then healing and then now kind of being in a spot where I really tend to myself. I love myself. I kind of know why I'm all messed up and my triggers and pain. I also very much know my pleasure, my play, and my possibility. And so now I'm in this space, and JJ very much just parallels this with me. You know, us being women that we're like, okay, we have things, we have limiting beliefs, we have fears, we have doubt, we have concerns, survival mode. We know that, we tend to that. Then there's also this part, and I've seen your stuff on TikTok and the stuff that you're addressing. So I kind of want to connect it in here. Us being women that give space, that we're humans, we tend to ourselves. Now we are creating businesses to serve. My community, your community, JJ's community, it has been all born out of to be of service because we personally went through something that hurt. It hurt, and we had to go into the depths and pull ourselves up. And now we have tools, resources, guidance, experience, downloads to share with others. For you now, you know, kind of speeding it up in the present moment, how is that now kind of connecting? How are you being of service to single mothers that have boys? What does that look like? How do you support them?
Something that is specific about being a mom of boys is, first of all, you were never a boy. So that's the first thing. Secondly, there may or may not be a good relationship of the boy with his dad. Some single moms never had a dad. There was never a dad in that life of the child. There was an abandonment early on or a choice to not have the father. And all children need fathers, and sons at a certain age gravitate toward their father. I'll give one example. My middle son chose to go and live with his father, of all things, at the time in Kiev, Ukraine. And it happened that his high school ended in 2020. So he went through COVID at the International American School of Kiev with his father, which all of that was kind of a curious experience. And I heard from my son's college friend who later traveled with him to his dad's, and this kid shook his head because he saw ways of being there. But on the other hand, my son identifies with his father and he wants to be with his father and he aspires to be in many ways like his father. So how do I not, how do I remember all the things that were great about their father represent that to them, point out to them how the good things in them that are present in their father. And so that is something I try to do with my son. He is got the biggest aspirations in terms of wanting to live internationally and so on. And so I try to do that with him.
And I just want to clarify, make sure I'm on the same page because I'm loving this. This is so cool. Um, because this is really like I haven't seen somebody that is specifically like single moms with boys. So I'm like, okay. And on one hand, I'm following because I have my own personal belief in the sense of family dynamics are very important.
Yeah.
And the lack or imbalance of relationships, mother and father, wife, husband, stuff like that, it causes limiting beliefs and weird patterns in people, which is fine. It's part of the design. But what I think you're pointing to, so correct me if I'm not, is there's this sense that you're taking your real lived experience and you're seeing, I'm going to use this word, a problem or a gap in the world or design of life that
Mhm.
women, because I'm like, I'm looking at my childhood. I was more with my dad, so it was kind of an
Mm.
interesting separate thing. But in the same aspect, I was not in an environment where it was empowering me to have an empowering perspective or
Right.
relationship with my other parent. As you can all imagine, that causes some stuff that I had to then deal with growing up in my later adult life. So I'm like, oh, okay, like, so are you going in to support that single mom to raise healthy men that, quote unquote, don't end up with daddy issues?
Well,
Am I
I
allowed to say
think
that?
this is the thing that can happen with boys of moms, especially moms who have to be working moms. There are so many. My hat is off to those single moms who are doing it truly on their own, whose the father of the kid is not involved financially. I had the benefit, thank goodness, of having some support financially. But one of the big problems that can be faced by a boy is when he gets buttonholed into being a sounding board for mom. And that depends upon, of course, personality and all of that. My current husband was a sounding board for mom. And it's very interesting what this is doing for him. It is allowing him to create something. If you want to look him up on LinkedIn, his name is Richard Ahron, Ahron, on LinkedIn. And he is creating the possibility that powerful women raising sons will benefit from a soundboard like him. Just a soundboard, not a therapist, not a coach, just a soundboard to protect that boy, to not have that energy barf all over the boy, because moms need an adult male to listen to them. And it's ideal when it's in the marriage and you're pulling together. But when it's not, where does a woman find someone who's safe? She doesn't want to maybe want to date him. She doesn't want advice. She doesn't. There's so many different landmines with other relationships that exist naturally in the world. A relative or a friend or whatever might just not be the sounding board that she needs. And Richard is putting himself out there. He was trained by his mother to be a sounding board, and he's been a very good listener all his life. And that's an interesting thing. Women need that. So if women want that, they can find that. If they look for me, I can hook them up with a good listener.
So, Cathy, I have on your website that Sacred Oasis Legacy focuses on empowering mothers and sons to heal emotionally, overcome life's challenges, and create loving and sustaining family legacy through online coaching, retreats, and support. And am I hearing that your husband does that too?
We're working together on it. Yeah.
That's great. So we're looking at the images, and in one of my programs called Rewiring Your Core Wound Patterns, there's a section on the differences between men and women because women don't know that men are different than them. And so I applaud that you're addressing this because when women treat men like women, it really screws them up. And we don't get to value and understand the differences and appreciate and honor the differences of how men think versus how women think, of how men respond versus how women respond, how men process versus how women process. We feel first and then we act. They think first and they feel last. So they're going to act, they're going to think, and then they might feel and then they're going to act versus we feel and then we act. Oh, we're gonna. So it's the difference of understanding how like mechanically, literally, and hormonally and neurochemically that we are built differently. And a lot of women need that. I find a lot of women in my business when I was a personal trainer, I had a lot of male clients, and I would hear the stories on a regular basis, and I kept thinking, you're what I don't love about the dynamic between men and women that we haven't learned is that women become emotionally manipulative very quickly because men allow it. Because men will respond if you cry or throw a fit or you start screaming because they want peace, they want silence, so they'll do whatever they need to do. But then the dynamic doesn't stop. And I have clients have back pain. And one of the chronic things about back pain is anger, it's repressed anger. And I would know that every time a client called in and he had to cancel because he had chronic back pain issues. I said, what happened? What happened this week? Oh, and then he explained his wife, manipulated him in this way. And I said, well, but then you, as a man, you allow it because you have no one's ever taught you how to process emotion. And so you then just respond in this sort of natural way that we're built to sort of protect ourselves. And then it never changes the dynamic. So I think
And
there's a real need for education for both men and women on how to process emotions and be and respect each other differently so that we can have healthy relationships and healthy, strong, independent men and women that don't manipulate or victimize each other and are codependent with each other. So I'm hoping those are things you're obviously going to be doing in your coaching.
Sure, absolutely. And another point I would like to make is education, generally speaking, was created and is created by women primarily for girls. And again, it's exactly what you said. Women see women things. We see through women's eyes. We just do. And the whole thing about dealing with confrontation and action and processing, all of that, there's so much activity needed for boys and for men. And women, absolutely, women can be manipulative. And I would say that men learn even through school and even through society to manage what amounts to, very well put, what amounts to manipulation. Instead of, again, creating that container where a woman can rest, can be safe, and can know that, yeah, she's going to be okay. And I think for single moms, wow, it's not meant to be that way. It's not. Moms who do the best, let's just leave it there, do the best as moms, as wives, as people out in the world are doing that in relationship with a safe man, where they are coming from a place of knowing they're loved. And I'm sure we all know the whole love and respect thing. That's a obvious thing. Men need respect even when they are not respectable. Women need love even when they're not loving. It's just the way it is. And so women need someone to create that container, to paint that picture and invite them to look together at that picture. I remember when I was so desperate because of the shame and because of the other aspects, the other things that I felt in the marriage, I was looking for someone who would say, oh, just keep going or keep being whatever, and your marriage is going to make it, and it'll be magic, and he'll be nice. Well, no, that wasn't how it was. As it happened, and I look all the way back, frankly, to when I got married that first time, because I pushed it. I pushed it. I was not okay being a single woman living in Europe, teaching. I was not okay with that. And yeah, I like pushed him. Now, who knows what could have happened had I just relaxed, I'm okay, and just been who I was being called to be out in the world. I didn't feel safe.
Um, okay, I wanna say I'm gonna say it. Okay, so I heard I was reading something. This is kind of a while ago. I was doing my own inner work stuff. I think I was reading stuff about feminine, masculine energy, something along those lines. And then there was this, I'm kind of seeing it in my brain. Narcissistic women create narcissistic men. And so I don't know why this
Hmm.
keeps popping up. So bear with me for a second. There's this interesting point because given what I know and JJ, all of her expertise and how the body, the mind, energy work, the things that I've studied, on one hand, I'm like, well, women, I think when they are not tending to themselves, when they're in relationships that are having them suppress, silence, be on edge, if they're not in communities or containers where they're being heard, seen, valued, affirmed, then we can kind of turn into a little sassy, a little resentful, blaming, manipulative victim. And then let's say that a healthy masculine energy is not present around that woman to maybe help with that safe container. Are you kind of saying, in a sense, not, no, not you saying, is that where, how that narcissism, and maybe that's not the word for it, but like the woman, the mother's pain that she's not being responsible about gets then transferred to the son? Like, is that what you're trying to essentially support with so that that doesn't happen? So women and their sons have healthy relationships.
Well, I obviously healthy relationships is very important, and I am no expert on narcissism.
Mm,
I suspect it a little. I feel like maybe it's just selfishness. I don't know. I'm no therapist. What do I know? But I do feel like people often use that term as a ex I possibly as an excuse to cut other people off. They're a narcissist. They're even biologically narcissistic. I heard that from somebody. My mother and ex-husband are both it's just biological. They can't do anything about it. I just have to cut them off. What are you going to do with that? So I don't know. I can't say. What I can say is I made decisions because I believed things that looking back are crazy. Can I be honest with you about one thing?
Of course,
This is
that's
crazy. And maybe there's somebody who isn't making this crazy thing, but has something else. And you're going, yeah, okay. I felt I had to get into a life insurance business because my former spouse was taking me back to court. The marriage was contentious. The divorce was even more. It was just fun all the time. And his way of doing that was he quit the job we knew about and renounced his US citizenship. Oh, and I ran to this insurance company and I was so naive. I thought everything was very easy. And I believed this. This is the crazy thing. If I make too much money in this life insurance business, when we go to court, the support order will be less and I will be harmed because I did well in this life insurance business. Is that insane?
no,
I see. Oh, it's
no,
not. Okay. Well,
no.
I'm glad. But
No,
it's,
in the moment you're in a crisis moment, again, out of alignment moment, survival moment. Fears come up, our all of our conscious beliefs and core wounds come up, and you're doing what you're doing to protect yourself. And
yeah,
it doesn't make any sense. It's all emotional, and it's like, in our subconscious, it's subconscious. It's not a choice. I mean, it's a choice, but it's based on the need to protect ourselves.
something else I later in retrospect realized is I had many possibilities as far as even if we just chose life insurance. If we only chose that, there are myriad choices one can make to join a company. I chose one where my immediate upline trainer was a very young person who didn't have any experience, and the person above that person was just had a number of different, let's say, things that were missing in terms of ability to train, in terms of many things. I chose that. I chose it. And they're not bad people. They, at that time, had those certain ways of being and limitations of different sorts. I opted in. I could have gone with other groups, other businesses, other companies, and worked with people who had different ways of being and could have taught me different things. I chose that. It was compatible with my belief that I better not make very much money.
Your life experience has educated you on so many things, right? Which all of us have. We all act and react from the lessons that we learn and the opportunities that get presented to us through our life path and the things that happen to us. Let's as we start to end this podcast, let's go directly into someone who's listening to this and maybe they relate to some of your story or maybe they don't relate to it at all. Maybe they really resonate with you as a person and they're thinking, I don't know, maybe this is for me. I'm not sure. How would you tell somebody like who would be the right, I mean, obviously you said single moms with sons. Okay, so we got that down. Now I'm a single mom with the son. Do I have to be having a problem? What would be some key indicators that would allow me to know I could benefit from working with you?
If you are dissatisfied with where you are and you are ruminating about what could happen, what might happen, if you find that your energy is being sucked away in that way, let's have a conversation. If you resonate with that story I said about my creating limitations for myself based on beliefs that weren't true at all, really. If that resonates in any way, if there is a secret thing you feel ashamed about, if you are the sort of person who deep underneath is really fearful and you're desperate to find another man and you're dating out there on those sites and something is saying to you, slow down. If that's you, let's just have a conversation. If you're worried about your boys and you can't get through the resentment you feel toward their father, if that's you, let's have a conversation. Oh, and if you just know, I need that sounding board, I can hook you up with Richard and he'll just listen.
So would they go to sacredoasislegacy.com?
Yes, they can reach me there. They can download my information. They can set something up on the calendar. And there's going to be a gift there that they can get. If they go there, they'll be able to download.
Excellent. So her information, Cathy's information, the website, and everything else will be in the show notes. So make sure to check that. And any last words, Tawney or Cathy?
I want to thank you both. I thank you for what you're doing. I know that many of you are listening to this, and you may never have seen sweet Tawney with her big smile. She is a phenom here in Ventura County, doing great work. And thank you, JJ. I look forward to getting to know you as well.
Thanks, Cathy. Tawney?
Yeah, thank you so much. And, Cathy, just to acknowledge you, because I've been seeing your posts on TikTok and the consistency. I got to kind of connect with you on some of the insurance side, which was awesome. So this was really new for me to hear you in this way, a little bit more about your story. And I just think it's really cool. It's another piece of evidence in the world that you're serving where, huge life transitions that you're not necessarily expecting, even though I think a lot of us women, we know because we haven't been honoring. The fact that you were able to, I'm sure you had your hardships and your doubts and your worries, and you might still, the showing up regardless of whatever pain and discomfort you've experienced, still showing up when your voice is shaky, sharing the message, sharing it on social media platforms. Like I applaud that effort because I'm thinking some of the women that I have a couple of gals in my life that they are single mamas with boys, and yeah, those men, they got some resentment. So what a cool conversation you're bringing to the table, very specifically for these individuals to have affirmation, to have a soundboard. It's just such an amazing gift that you're bringing to the world. So thank you, and thank you for sharing it.
Well, thank you. Appreciate the opportunity.
Well, if you've enjoyed this conversation today, make sure to share it with those that you think might need it. Spread the word. We hope you'll subscribe to the show. And again, we look forward to getting to know you and supporting you in all the ways, business and personal, so that we as women may make a bigger impact on the world. Thank you, Cathy. Thank you, Tawney. Thank you, all of you. And I look forward to speaking with you again soon.